Hello and welcome to this Foster Care Institute online training webinar, How to Build Trust with Children in Crisis. I'm your host, Dr. John DeGarmo, founder and director of the Foster Care Institute. I am a consultant for foster care and child welfare agencies across the United States and globe. I'm an international trainer for child welfare workers and foster parents, and author of several foster parenting books, and a foster parent myself to many, many children. Indeed, we've had over 60 plus children come to be part of our home over the years. Our goal during this webinar is to increase your awareness of issues of trust with children in foster care. Our key objectives are to increase your awareness of the lack of trust and how it impacts the lives of children and youth placed in the foster care system. In addition, we're going to help you gain an understanding of how to develop and implement some strategies that are designed to aid you in helping to build trust with the children placed in your home or the children that you are caring for. Indeed, if you've read any of my books, then you know that we've had several children placed in our own home as foster family who have had issues of trust, who have had issues of attachment, who have had challenges and difficulties, so many challenges and difficulties that surmounted them that they did not know how to trust somebody, or they did not wish to trust somebody because they had been betrayed so many times, betrayed by the adults in their lives, betrayed by those who were to care for them, betrayed by those who were to love them unconditionally, betrayed by those who they tried to trust in. Now, as we've seen here in several of our training webinars here at the Foster Care Institute, when a child is placed into a foster care home, it is a time of tremendous loss. I want you to imagine a child who is suddenly, perhaps 10:30 at night. Indeed, my first placement was placed in our home at 10:30 at night. So at late at night, without any type of warning, without any type of notice of any kind, child welfare shows up at the house, perhaps even sheriff or the police, and the child is removed from their home. They're taken from their home, perhaps their mothers, their fathers, perhaps their relatives, maybe even their siblings. They're taken from their bedroom, their toys, their pets, their stuffed animals. They're taken from their kitchen, their family room. They're taken from their home, their neighborhood. They're taken from, if they go to school, taken from school, taken from relatives and neighborhoods, taken from everything that is familiar to them. And they're placed into a home with strangers, foster parents, perhaps like myself. Everything that they've known in their life has now been stripped from their lives, and they're placed into a home with strange people. They're placed into a home maybe with strange now siblings, children their own age, placed in a home with strange rules and expectations, perhaps new foods and new diets and new cultures and traditions. Everything that is familiar to them is now unfamiliar. It is a time of tremendous uncertainty for these children. And they may ask questions like, why am I here? When do I go home? Who are these people? Will these people hurt me? Will these people abuse me? Will these people yell at me? Will these people touch me? Will these people be able that I can trust? In addition, perhaps they're placed into a home and they have feelings of guilt. They might feel in some instances that it was their fault. They might believe they did something wrong. They might have such feelings of guilt that overwhelm them. I think back to the time that we had a sibling group of 5 placed into our home: a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old, all siblings. I write about this in the book Love and Mayhem. And the 13-year-old was in charge of his siblings, if you will. It was his role to ensure that his siblings were dressed and fed and off to school every day. It was his role, if you will, to ensure that the house ran smoothly. It was his role, if you will, to even pay the bills. There was no father figure in the picture whatsoever, and the mother at the time was running a drug lab out of her house. So she played all of the parental responsibilities upon her son. Again, 13 years of age. So when he arrived at our house, he felt that he had let his family down. He felt that he had left his siblings down. He felt that he had left his mother down. He felt that it was his fault that they were placed in foster care. And he had a difficult time trusting anybody. Indeed, so many times when the children are placed into a foster care setting, their feelings of grief, their feelings of guilt, their feelings of confusion, of fear, whatever it might be, many times these feelings, these emotions overwhelm them. They do not know how to process these emotions, and it makes it even much more difficult. Indeed, it is a time of loss. I often tell foster parents and those who work with children in foster care, you can set aside all of the trauma, the neglect, the abuse, whatever it may be the child may have experienced, perhaps even abandonment. You can put all that aside. When a child is placed into a foster care home, that is also a time of anxiety. Again, they have these feelings and these emotions that overwhelm them that they do not know how to process. They are now living with strangers. Everything that they've known and trusted in their lives has been removed from them. It's a time of tremendous anxiety. As we've seen here in several of our training webinars here at the Foster Care Institute, there are several forms of neglect. There is educational neglect. I think back to the time we had a 7-year-old child placed in her home. She could not read or write her own name simply because there was nobody in her household who would help her with her schoolwork, would read to her, would help her with writing. All of her educational needs were neglected while she was at home. Many times the children might suffer from emotional neglect. They might have complete inadequate supervision. I think back to the time we had a 4-year-old placed in our home, and he had, if you will, no boundaries. There was no sort of consistency or structure in his life, and there was no supervision. There are those children who may be placed into the home because of medical neglect or perhaps physical neglect. We also know there are many forms of abuse as well: physical abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, verbal abuse. And many children from foster care might suffer from neglect or abuse, or perhaps even both. When the child arrives at your foster care home, perhaps even your home itself, again, it is a time of tremendous anxiety. There also might be some form of excitement for the foster parents. Foster parents may be very excited to have the placement in their home. Again, I think back to my very, very first placement, and I was very excited. My wife and I have been waiting for it for some time. I often joke to foster parents that I recognize within the first 20 minutes of my first placement that I was not prepared, that I was simply not prepared. My training did not prepare me for what was to come. Well, there is truth in that. Many times foster parents are not prepared for the arrival of a child. So therefore, sometimes not only might the child be afraid of the placement, there may be also some in your home who might have concerns or fears as well when a new child is placed into the home. And of course, both have questions, both the foster parents and the child. The child might have questions again, such as, why am I here? When do I go home? Will I ever see my mom again? Is it my fault that I'm here? Does anybody love me? Will these new people hurt me? Will I be safe? Foster parents may have questions such as, how long will this child be here? What kind of anxieties might they have? Will this be a good fit for my family? Will my family be a good fit for this child? Can I provide what this child needs? My own children, will they get along with this new child? How will this affect my work, etc.? All have concerns. When a child is placed into a foster care home, it is a time of disruption as well. Every time a child moves from one place to the next, from one home to the next, there are more and more issues of trust. Indeed, it's known as multiple displacement, when a child is displaced multiple times. When a child hops, if you will, from one home to the next over several months or perhaps even several years, many times that child will suffer issues of trust and issues of attachment. Make no mistake, when a child is placed into a foster care home, it is a frightening time. It is a very scary time for that child. Indeed, the reason why I wrote the book, A Different Home, a New Foster Child Story, the children's book, was to help that child during a very scary time. As I have held so many young children in my arms those first few nights, and I'm unable to answer the questions and provide the feeling of security that child needed, and I've held these children as they've cried themselves to sleep. As they cried themselves to sleep, because again, it is a very scary time being placed into a foster care home. As noted, is a time of mixed emotions. Feelings of and emotions of fear and anxiety, of confusion. Maybe even the child is angry at the caseworker, angry at their birth parents, angry at the foster parents, angry at the situation. And they may have guilt as well, as I noted earlier, and there may be feelings of self-doubt. Perhaps a child feels that they're not worth being loved, that they're not worth loving, that they're not worthwhile in general. When a child is placed into a foster care home, there truly is no reason to trust. There's no reason for that child to trust their foster parents. Because foster parents, like myself, are strangers. Yes, we provide structure and stability and consistency and safety and unconditional love. At the end of the day, though, we as foster parents truly are strangers. I recall the time we had a 17-year-old placed in our home. In my book, Fostering Love, I name her Helena. When Helena was 9 years of age, her parents were killed in Romania, where she was from. A family from New York said, well, we will adopt you. We will teach you English. We will be your forever family. We will love you unconditionally. And for 6 months, she was a victim of human trafficking. And then they gave her back to the state. They unadopted her, if you will. A family from Pennsylvania said, well, we'll be your family. We will teach you English. We will love you unconditionally. And for 1 year, she was a victim of sexual abuse. And then they gave her back as well. A third family, by the time she was 11 years of age, considered her fourth family, if you will, because her first family, her parents, had died. And in her mind, at a young age, that was a form of abandonment. Her parents had abandoned her in her mind through death. Well, this family from Georgia said, we'll finish teaching you English at age 11. We will be your family and we will love you unconditionally. And for the next 6 years, she was physically, sexually, emotionally abused and neglected. And then they gave her back to the state. And when she arrived at our house at 17 years of age, after 9 years of being abused, and 9 years of family saying, we will be your forever family and loving you unconditionally, you can imagine that she had issues of trust. Why should she trust my wife and I when we said that we would take care of her, when we said that we would protect her, when we said that we would help her, when we told her that we loved her? Why should she trust us? Indeed, she had no reason whatsoever to trust us because the adults in her life had betrayed her and she had been abandoned. Sadly, her story is not alone. Sadly, far too many children placed in the foster care system have been abused in regards to trust. Their trust has been abused in various ways. Perhaps there's a child in your home right now, or perhaps you're working with a child in some fashion who has issues of trust. When a child is placed into a foster care home, it can be a very, very difficult time. The child may test their new family, may test to see if they can indeed trust them, may test them to see if what they say they are going to do will actually stick, if you will. Perhaps their rules or their consequences or their expectations. They're testing to see if those are truly in place and if there's consistency. They're testing these new families to see if they again can trust them. As a result, there may be issues of behavior. Perhaps a child may exhibit anger management issues. Many times, children who have issues of trust, they lie. And they lie to those who are caring for them simply in order to try to protect themselves, if you will. Those children who have issues of trust are often apt to steal. They may have eating disorders. Perhaps they are withdrawn. And those children who have issues of trust often have issues of sleep anxiety as well. Tremendous difficulty in trying to get to sleep at night. We cover many of these webinars here at the Foster Care Institute, including those on sleep anxiety and eating disorders and anxiety in general. And if you have questions about those, I encourage you to watch those webinars. So there's no doubt why children and youth in foster care have issues of trust. Indeed, it's rather clear to see. So how do we help a child who has an issue of trust? How do we help that child whose trust has been betrayed throughout their lives? How do we help those children when they're first placed in their home that they learn how to trust us? Well, let's examine that. To begin with, we can help this very scary and frightening time, this time of anxiety, this time of disruption in their life, this time of loss, by preparing for the child's arrival. It's important for us to remember that placement into a foster care home is a time of anxiety. Yes, again, as I noted earlier, you can provide such a warm, nurturing, welcoming, loving, safe, stable, consistent structure and family. It is still a scary time. So it's important for us as foster parents to try to make this time of transition from their old house into the new home. Transition of time of inconsistency and abuse and neglect and abandonment into your home. Try to make this time of transition as smooth and as welcoming as possible. And this is how we do it here at the DeGarmo household. We understand the child is going to be afraid coming to our home, and they have many, many questions, and there are, again, going to be issues of trust. So what we do is we go down to the car as a family. We welcome the child. We introduce ourselves. For myself, it's Mr. John, and my wife is Miss Kelly. It's a very southern United States thing to do. We will give them a very calm, warm tour of the home, show them where their bedroom is, have a nightlight in the bedroom, nightlight in the bathroom. We have an arrival basket for them. Perhaps the arrival basket might have hygiene items, or maybe plush, soft animals, or maybe some toys appropriate for their age, maybe some snacks. We might ask them what their favorite meal is, or perhaps we'll ask the caseworker in advance if they might know what that favorite meal is and try to prepare for them. Perhaps we might even have a welcome to our family sign. Many times my own children will take them by the hand and go outside and play with them. Break down those barriers. Play therapy is an amazing thing. So again, we try to make this very difficult, challenging time of transition as smooth and welcoming as possible. Again, favorite meals, arrival basket, nightlights, etc. We have a whole webinar dedicated on it, and we have a chapter in the book, the Foster Parenting Manual, that you might find of interest. During this arrival, we might help him unpack the bags and hang up the clothes if he is open to this and if he's welcome to this. So you might ask questions like, would you like me to help you unpack your things? Would you like me to help you put away the clothing? Now, he might be embarrassed. He might be nervous. He might be untrusting, most likely. Perhaps he's embarrassed because he has very little clothing, or maybe his clothing is filled with holes and tatters and rips, or might reek of smoke, etc. So he might be embarrassed. So gently ask, would you like me to help you unpack your things and put them away? And if he says no, then that's perfectly fine. Allow him to do it by himself if he so cares to. Plan those first few meals around food items that he might like. I mentioned earlier that we give the children a tour of our home. We always end the tour back in the kitchen with a plate of homemade chocolate chip cookies and a glass of milk. After all, who does not like chocolate chip cookies and milk, right? Again, we try to do that as some type of warm welcome. So try to plan meals around food items that he might like. Ask him what he might like. Perhaps it's pizza, perhaps it's hot dogs, perhaps it's spaghetti or barbecue, whatever it might be. Those first few nights, try to plan meals around him. Again, this helps him during a very, very scary time to have something that's familiar in his life. These familiar foods. Don't introduce him to your diets and your cultural and your traditions those first few nights. My wife is a doctor of nutrition, and we all often eat organic, non-processed foods. But those first few nights, we let that slide, and we try to accommodate the child's needs. Again, comfort foods, if you will. Ask him if he'd like to go help shopping with you to pick out some of his meals coming up, or some snacks that he might like, or drinks that he might like. Indeed, you might ask him if he'd like to help prepare and cook those meals. Now, this is a wonderful skill that he needs to learn at some point in his life. When you help a child, when you ask a child if he will help you cook, you're doing a number of things. To begin with, you're showing him that you enjoy his presence and you enjoy his company and you enjoy spending time with him. You show him that you trust him to help you cook. You are teaching him valuable life skills that he will need later on in life. He will have to know how to cook and prepare healthy meals. And perhaps you're introducing a possible career for him as well. So ask him if he'd like to go shopping with you to pick out some of his favorite meals and snacks and drinks. And again, ask him if he'd like to help prepare the meals alongside you. One thing you can do to help a child who has issues of trust is to ensure that he is safe. He has to feel that he is safe. Most likely, he will be very safe in your home because you have structure and safety and consistency as priorities. Safety is a priority, but he might not feel safe. He needs to feel safe, in order to trust that you're not going to harm him and that he is safe. He might be triggered by some sudden noises at night. He might be triggered by the darkness or nighttime. He might be triggered by ways that you might not expect. So again, it's important that you ensure his safety and remind him on a day-to-day and night-to-night basis that he is safe. Saying simple things like, don't worry, sweetheart, you're going to be okay. You're going to be safe here. Nothing's going to hurt you here. And when you tuck him in at night or you say goodnight to him, remind him that he will be safe. Ask him if he'd like to keep the door open a bit with a light on. Remind him that there's a night light on in the bathroom and he can go to the bathroom anytime he needs to, that it's okay for him to leave his room at night to go to the bathroom. And again, there'll be night light there for him. Remember, your house is a strange place to him. He might not know where the bathroom is those first few nights. In fact, he probably will not know where the bathroom is. So he needs to have that reassurance that he's allowed to go and use the bathroom at nighttime and where it is at. This helps him to feel, again, safe. If there's a loud noise in nighttime, go in and check on him. Ask him if he's okay, and remind him that he is safe. Perhaps a thunderstorm is over your area. Loud thunder and bright bolts of lightning. If this is the case, again, go into his room, check on him, let him know that he is safe, ask him if he needs anything. Now, after a while, after the placement's been there for a while, the child's been there for a while, most likely the honeymoon period, if you will, is going to end. It's quite common for the honeymoon period to end when the child's placed in your home, maybe after a couple days, maybe after a couple weeks, whatever it might be. At some point, that honeymoon period will end, and you may begin to see the child's real behavior. A new sense of normalcy may arrive. You might see those anxieties. You might see the lying or the stealing. You might see those food disorders, whatever it might be. You might see issues of anger or behavior. Perhaps he has reactive attachment disorder or disinhibited social engagement disorder or other disorders and anxieties. These might rear their heads, if you will, after the honeymoon period has ended. So be prepared for that. Continue to be consistent with your expectations and your rules, and by no means be judgmental. You should never be judgmental towards him or towards his biological family members. Remember, he has a hard time trusting you, and he may test you. He may lash out in displays of anger, or he may withdraw. He may say things about you or towards you or about your family. He might yell, he might curse and swear and use profanity. Whatever it might be. Remember, this has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the fact that he is filled with emotions and anxieties that overwhelm him, and he does not know how to process it. He's in a strange house with strange people. He's been removed from everything that's familiar to him, and he's had a hard time trusting you. Again, why should he? Because you're strangers. So do not take his behavior personally. Once more, it has nothing to do with you. It is all about the emotions and the anxieties and the lack of trust that are overwhelming him. He is having a very, very hard time adjusting to this strange family, strange home, strange rules, strange expectations, strange food. So when he does lash out, when he does say those things, when he is withdrawn, when he does not look you in the eye, when he lies to you, when he curses and swears at you, when he's throwing things in anger, do not take his behavior personally. It has nothing to do with you. It has all to do with his anxiety and his lack of trust. One gift you can give him during those first few weeks and months is the gift of time. After all, building trust does take time. Trust does not occur overnight. Trust does not happen quickly. The time frame of having a child learning how to trust somebody is different for each child and each situation. For some children, it might be several days, and they trust you automatically. For some children, it might be weeks, it might be months, it might be years. Again, the time frame is different for every child, and building trust takes time. So give him that gift of time. Allow him. Don't rush it. Don't force it upon him. Be realistic with your expectations. Now, you might need to lower your expectations when he's first placed into your home when it comes to the child following your rules. Indeed, I often suggest to foster parents that you do not give out your rules or discuss your rules and expectations and household rules, if you will. Do not do that those first few nights. Allow him to adjust. Allow him to cry. Allow him to question. Allow him to be afraid. After a few days have gone by, maybe a week, then you could set him down and talk about your expectations in the house, your household rules, etc. So those first few nights, if he's breaking all of the household rules, that's okay. Lower those expectations. Lower your expectations on hygiene. Perhaps he does not clean his teeth, brush his hair, take a shower, use deodorant, etc. Because he might be coming from an environment where those were never taught. In addition, maybe he was taught those skills. Nevertheless, when he's placed into your home, again, the anxiety is overwhelming him, and he's not placing any energy or thought towards hygiene. In addition, the same thing with food, etc. Lower your expectations at the start. You might also need to lower your expectations of yourself as well. Parenting is a difficult job. Foster parenting is a very different job than parenting your biological children. Foster parenting is an extremely difficult job at times, and you're never ever going to be perfect at it. So do not place undue expectations upon yourself. Don't expect to be the perfect foster parent. Don't expect to be the perfect parent in general. You will make mistakes. You will, at times, perhaps lose control. Perhaps you might yell in anger. Perhaps you might say things that you wished you had not said. You're going to make mistakes. It's normal. So you might need to lower expectations of yourself, especially during those first few nights of placement when there is so much anxiety in the household. As noted, he might try to test you, so expect to be tested by the child placed in your home. It's important to consider this. Children in foster care often feel they have no sense of control. They did not control being removed from their home. They did not control being removed from their mothers and their fathers. They did not control being removed perhaps from their siblings. They did not have control being removed from their school and their schoolmates and their teachers if they go to a new school now. They did not have any control being placed into your home. They had no control over who's in the home with them. There's no control whatsoever. So they might try to seek some sort of control in some way. And they might try to test you to see if they have that feeling of control. They might test you to see if you are consistent with your expectations, if you're consistent with your rules, if you're consistent with what you say you will do, if you're consistent with what you say will happen. They're going to test you to see if you are consistent and if they can trust you. When you say this or you say that, how do they know they can trust you? When they say that nighttime is at 10 o'clock, lights out, how do they know that? They're going to try to test you. When you say there's no profanity in your home, or if you say this or that, if you have rules and expectations in place, they are most likely going to try to test those rules to see if you're consistent and if they can trust what you say is true. If they can trust what you say is real, or if it is all fabrication. Let's look at what Jocelyn said. You are a home to provide stability and safety. Two things unfamiliar to these kids. They will push the envelope and your buttons in some of the dumbest ways, particularly preteens, because they are protecting themselves. And this quote comes to us from Jocelyn. Indeed, many times these children will push your buttons because they're trying to protect themselves. They have been betrayed so many times in their lives, in so many different ways, by so many people in their lives, they're trying to protect themselves. One way to establish trust is through consistency. It's important that when you do establish rules and expectations and consequences in your household, that you're consistent with those rules. You're consistent with those expectations, and you're consistent with the consequences, not just with that child, not just with a child placed in your home, but with all in your home. If you have biological children, can the biological children get away with things that the children in foster care cannot? He's going to be testing that. He's going to see if you're consistent with that. He's going to see if your actions match your words. So it's important for you as a foster parent to help him know what to expect, to help him know what your expectations are of him in the household and what the rules and consequences are. This helps to establish feelings of stability. See, consistency and stability go hand in hand. In order for him to feel safe and that he can trust you, he has to know that what your words are, they're true, and that there is stability and consistency. Again, most likely he has exhibited some sort of behavioral issues. He might be withdrawn, he might lash out. He's filled with anxiety. And most likely it's due to the trauma he may have experienced before being placed in your home. It's important for you as a foster parent and as a caregiver to learn about his past history of trauma, neglect, and abuse, as well as his family history in general. For so many children in foster care, abuse is generational and it's cyclical. It goes in cycles and has been for generations. I think back to some of the children placed in my home who are third generation foster care. Their parents and grandparents were also placed in the foster care system. It was important for me to understand that sense of family trauma and family abuse. So be trauma informed foster parents. Use those trauma informed parenting skills. And we talk about those in Trauma Informed Parenting Part 1 and Trauma Informed Parenting Part 2 here at the Foster Care Institute. I encourage you to watch those webinars. Another way to build trust is by meeting the child's needs. Ask him what he needs. The questions like, what do you need? How can I help you? What can I get for you? Get to learn what his needs are. And try your very, very best to meet those needs. One way you can help him learn to trust is by making time for him, spending time with him. Get to know what his interests are. Ask him what his hobbies are. Find out what his hopes and dreams, his fears and concerns are. Get to know what makes him him. Find his likes and dislikes, his concerns, his hopes, his dreams, etc. Because you're taking interest in him that helps him to learn that he can trust you. Spend some time together with him, watching movies together, making a bowl of popcorn and sitting down and watching a movie that's family appropriate with him. Go for a walk outside, cook together, read together, sit down and do a puzzle together, play board games together. Spend time with him. Show him that you are interested in him. Show him that you enjoy his company. Show him that you like him. He needs to feel that he's okay. He needs to feel that you like him, that you value your time with him. When you do this, it helps to build relationships and it helps him to gain confidence. Confidence in himself, confidence in you, confidence in the situation. Talk to him as much as you possibly can. Communicate with him throughout the day. Talk to him when you get up in the morning and you wake up and you're having breakfast. Talk to him when you cook and you clean. Talk to him before school, after school. Talk to him during those times that are enjoyable. When you're having the puzzle, when you're watching the movie together, when you're outside playing basketball or throwing a baseball together. Talk to him when he's doing some of the family chores, perhaps helping with the dishes or sweeping the floor after dinner or feeding the dog or cat. Talk to him throughout the day. He needs to learn that you enjoy talking with him. That helps to build trust. One way that you can help to establish trust with him is to talk openly about his feelings of grief and loss. We know that when he's placed in your home that it is a time of loss. Acknowledge those feelings. Let him know it's okay to be sad. Let him know it's okay to feel lonely. Let him know it's okay to be afraid. Let him know it's okay to feel angry. And all those feelings are completely acceptable. Let him know that it's acceptable to have these feelings and acknowledge them. You may say things like, I see that you're upset, and that's okay. I hear in your voice that you're scared. I want to remind you that you're safe here. I understand that you're angry, and that's okay. It's okay to be angry at me. It's okay to be angry at the situation. It's okay to be angry at the caseworker. It's okay to be angry at your mom and dad. Help him identify those feelings and that these feelings are normal. At the same time, do not minimize his feelings. Do not minimize his concerns, his emotions. Do not say things like, things are going to happen for a reason, son, or you're going to be stronger because of whatever happened to you. This is minimizing his feelings. When you do this, it can lead to him feeling even worse about the situation, and he might not want to talk about his feelings because you are minimizing his feelings. Again, it's critical and essential that you reassure him that his feelings are okay, his feelings are normal. Now, listening can be different than communication. Allow him the opportunity to talk to you. Not necessarily talk with you and have a conversation. Allow him the opportunity and the chance to talk to you. And you listen to him without judgment, without criticism, and sometimes without comments. If he should say some things that might be alarming or concerning, remain calm, remain patient, remain compassionate, and by all means, remain interested in what he has to say. When he's talking to you, you need to show him that you are interested in what he has to say. You need to show him that this time together is very, very important. So use those emphatic listening skills. And if you're unfamiliar with what emphatic listening is, I encourage you to watch the Foster Care Institute training webinar, Emphatic Listening. It's a skill that you can use with children in your home as well as those that you care for. Look for opportunities to show him that you trust him. Show him that you trust him by giving him opportunities to display that form of trust. These might include walking the dog, feeding the cats, helping with dinner, putting away the dishes, maybe using the computer, staying up later at night watching TV. Look for ways for the child to show you that you can trust him. Again, let me say that again. Look for ways for the child to show you that you can trust him by giving him opportunities. Most likely, the child's coming from a place of no. Everything he's asked for, everything he's asked, everything he's said is to no. Do not be quick to say no to everything that he asks for or that he wants to do. In fact, try to say yes more than you say no. Saying yes to opportunities that he's asking about and requests, well, these help to establish trust. So look for those opportunities for you to say yes. Or you might do this instead. He might ask you if he can stay up an hour late to watch TV. Perhaps you might say, well, we can't do an hour, but would you like to do 30 minutes of TV and 30 minutes of reading? Give him the opportunity to make a choice and decision. That gives him some sense of control. Maybe he wants to have more dessert. You might say something like, well, you know what? Maybe instead of having more dessert, we could have some raspberries and strawberries or some fruit or something like that. Can he play the video games? Well, I'll tell you what, maybe you can play the video game for 30 minutes, and then we can do a puzzle together. How does that sound? Again, you give him those opportunities to make choices that helps to establish not only confidence, but trust as well. Now, of course, you need to be trustworthy in his eyes also. When you say you're going to do something, make sure you carry on through and do it. Carry through on what you say you will do. Do not make promises that you know you can't keep. Again, let me say that. Do not make promises that you cannot keep to him. Because if you break promises to him, he simply can't trust you. And when you make a mistake, when you lose control, when you say something that you might regret, apologize. Apologize for it with sincerity. You may say something like, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to lose control, but I did. I said something that I regret. I say something I wish I did not do, and I'm sorry. And I hope that you forgive me. I didn't mean to yell at you. I lost control. It's my fault, and I'm deeply sorry. I hope you forgive me. When you do this, he knows that he can trust you a little bit more. Show him that he can trust you. Show him that you are human and that you make mistakes. Show him that you're going to admit when you make a mistake. You're teaching him life skills here as well. Briella says this: never make a promise you won't keep. These kids value so much when you say, I'm going to, and then you follow through. Even as simple as a bedtime story can help them trust you and know they can rely on you. A lot of kids in foster care have huge trust issues and are used to relying on themselves for so many things. Again, this is from Briella. An additional way with helping him learn how to trust is by helping him keep those connections in his past. His past connections. His connections to his past are important to him. Remember, he came from a family before he came to your home. If possible, allow him to stay connected to his family. Allow him to stay connected to his friends if it's possible and if it is safe, and if it is, of course, supervised and monitored. Allow him to stay connected, if possible, to his former foster families, caseworkers, teachers, etc. This can be done through emails or phone calls or video calls, etc. When he feels connected to others, he can share his feelings, and he feels less alone in his grief. Charles Barkley, the NBA player, once said that he was not a role model. He was wrong. We are all role models to somebody. Remember, you are a role model to him. He is watching you, and he is listening to you. Always. If you feel comfortable and if it's appropriate, share your own experiences when you felt grief. Share your own experiences when you had time of loss in your life and how you were able to address it, how you were able to cope with it. Again, if you feel comfortable and if it is appropriate. He's going to learn from you. He's watching what you do. He's listening to what you say. One way that you can help establish trust is through the power of praise. Children, all children, need to have words of praise and encouragement every single day. Sadly, so many children have never had a positive word said about them, a positive word said to them. They've never had somebody praise them or encourage them in any way. So find ways and opportunities to praise that child in every way, at all times, morning, noon, and night. And there's a great list right there, 25 ways to encourage things that you can say to him. To be sure, all children need physical contact of some kind. Some children, sadly, have never had any sort of positive physical contact. This helps with trust, physical contact. At the same time, it's important that you are sensitive to his needs and experiences. Physical contact might be a hug. It might be an arm around the shoulder. It might be a shoulder to lean upon when he is sad and crying. Again, be sensitive to his needs and his experiences from the past. He might have no desire for any sort of physical contact whatsoever. If you have questions about what kind of physical contact you can use towards the child placed in your home, ask your caseworker, and always make sure that any sort of physical contact is done in an appropriate fashion. Again, if you're unsure what that might look like, contact your caseworker and ask your caseworker about it. Trust takes time. Trust is critical for him, not only now, but for the rest of his life. When you help to build trust in a child, you help to improve his mental health as well. You help to improve his mental health as well. We discuss this much more in the book, The Foster Care Survival Guide. You can find that book and many books at the Foster Care Institute online and where all good books are sold. If you have questions about this webinar or want more information, then go to the Foster Care Institute at drjohndegarmofostercare.com. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and YouTube at Dr. John DeGarmo Foster Care Expert. If you have questions about this webinar or anything else I might be able to help you with, please feel free. Email me at drjohndegarmo@gmail.com. When a child is placed in your home, it's going to be a time of tremendous anxiety for him. When a child is placed in your home, he may have issues of trust. He may test you. He may lash out. He may say things when the honeymoon is over that are hurtful. Remember, he needs you to give him the gift of time. He needs you to be patient and compassionate and understanding towards him. He needs you to listen to him. He needs you to talk with him. He needs you to play side by side with puzzles and basketball. He needs you to show interest in his hobbies, his interests, his desires, his hopes, his fears, concerns. All of this helps to establish trust. I want to thank you for giving that child the gift of time. I want to thank you for giving that child a home of stability, of structure, of unconditional love. I want to thank you for all that you do for children in crisis. And thank you for taking time to watch this webinar. For the Foster Care Institute, I'm Dr. John DeGarmo.